This is the area in relation to giving the competent authority the power to impose financial penalties on those who would see fit to avoid or fail to implement noise mitigation or operating restricting measures and so on. Obviously, the Act, as it stands at the moment, is allowing for the competent authority to bring forward a compliance report in relation to what work they've done on the measures, and it already provides for where the competent authority can bring proposals to avoid or reduce failures referred to in the sections. All we're seeking to do here is to allow the competent authority, in trying to reduce or avoid the failures of compliance, to have the ability to levy a financial penalty as part of that. And the reason for that is that the carrot doesn't really go all that far. And unless you have the ability to sort of financially penalise the airport operator or whoever it may be, the airline and so on, well then the incentive is massively reduced. Now, I did have a different amendment on this at committee stage that was probably a bit more cumbersome and a bit more prescriptive, which was probably beyond the what should be in primary legislation, but I think we need to have some reference to it here which doesn't tie the hands and isn't too prescriptive. And I do it in the context that other jurisdictions very much have this principle in place. For example, if you look at the night noise policy in Manchester as an example, their strategy is based on 6 different categories, of which noise penalties are one substantial part of that. So they operate a system whereby night movements can't exceed, say, 7% of the airport's total movement. That's the first thing they do. Then they look at developing what they call a quota count budget for summer and winter seasons and developing up a point system. And basically points are graded based on the noisiness of the aircraft. So very old aircraft would have a high quota count on it. New aircraft would have a low quota count on that. And then, for example, they would put in measures. For example, they'd say a quiet and modern aircraft may be classified as a GC 25 on arrival and a 0.5 on departure, while older aircraft might be classified as a GC4 on arrival and GCQ on departure. And you basically get so it's basically a way of allowing the airport operators manage their noise. But when they don't do it, and they'd have a lot of measures restricting the numbers of noisier aircraft in particular at night time, with a few measures in place. But when they don't, they have the ability then of imposing a financial penalty. So on the one hand, you're encouraging pilots to take steps to reduce the noise, to fly their aircraft in the quietest possible way. You're also trying to encourage the airlines to introduce the quietest airport, but when they don't, then they have a grading in terms of decibels, and then anything over that in this instance would bring a minimum penalty of €750 will be applied for the first decibel beyond which the noise level is exceeded, and a further 150 for each decibel beyond that. So the principle is there and it works. It's a little bit of carrot and a little bit of stick. The same way, say, engine testing, for example, wouldn't be permitted within certain time frames, or maybe you'd agree a certain number. In Manchester it's 20 engine tests a year would be permitted between the hours of 10 and 6 in the morning. Generally they would be prohibited, that sort of thing. So what we're seeking to do here really is get a genuine balanced approach in terms of the implementation of noise mitigation measures and the implementation of operating restrictions. And to do that, encouraging good activity is one way of doing it, coming up with a whole positive list of recommendations that the pilots can do to avoid the use of reverse thrust and so on, all that good stuff. But I think having the ability to have a financial penalty is a key part of that as well. And I think by putting it in the way we've put it in here, it overcomes some of the more prescriptive attributes of the amendment I had at committee stage and gets over maybe some concerns that the Minister had at that stage that there might be a constitutional impediment or some sort of other usual legal argument as to why we can't put measures in the bill, I don't accept that, and I think that the generality of this amendment just establishing their ability to set in a financial penalty overcomes that point. So I would move them, the two amendments in that regard.